Hello, everyone. Welcome to this presentation on social media and what it means to ensure your social media posts are accessible to people with disabilities. I'm Kathy Marks, the IT Accessibility Coordinator for UTO at ASU. Before we get started, I'd like to invite anyone who needs to download an accessible copy of these slides or the text transcript from the webpage links.asu.edu/SOC-MED. So that's so you can download a copy of the slides. Again, that's links.asu.edu/SOC-MED. If you have any trouble downloading those, go ahead and interrupt me. In fact, at any point in this presentation that you have a question or something to add, please feel free to unmute and break in. We'll have time for questions at the end, but I know sometimes questions can't wait. So this workshop will be in 3 segments. First, we'll look at the state of social media when it comes to accessibility. Then we'll roll up our sleeves and get into some tips for making your account or profile page more accessible. And finally, we'll learn to make our social media posts more accessible. So before we talk about how accessible social media is, does anyone have any questions? And I cannot see the chat. So let me see here. Okay, I'm going to kind of park the chat over, but if Kelsey, if you see anybody asking questions, could you read them to me?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. These days, social media has almost become essential. More and more universities, companies, government entities, and other organizations use social media to engage with customers, share information, and deliver services more quickly and effectively. For example, if you're looking for a job, social media can be vital. The percentage of recruiters who use LinkedIn, 94%. Social media is used for communication, collaboration, reviews and opinions, brand monitoring, entertainment, media sharing, political activity, news reporting, and more. Because social media is so essential, accessibility to it is vital. As this slide shows, over 3.81 billion people worldwide actively use social media. And nearly a quarter of them have some form of disability, either visible, such as blindness or mobility disorders, or invisible, such as hearing impairments and cognitive or mental health disorders. Many other people experience temporary or situational disabilities every day. For example, trying to read with a migraine or outside with the sun glaring on your screen. It's imperative that we remember these folks are a large segment of our audience. The millions and millions of people with disabilities, both temporary and permanent, deserve access to the same opportunities and information that abled people have. Unfortunately, social media is not as accessible as it should be. For example, of the 1,695 respondents to a 2017 WebAIM screen reader survey, only 14.9% found social media accessible, 54.3% found it somewhat accessible, and 29.4% found it somewhat or very inaccessible. Every year, Accessibility Oz, a well-known Australian accessibility consultancy, performs accessibility testing of a number of popular social media networks. In 2019, they tested the ones in this table: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Twitter, and YouTube. Their test was a standard user journey of registering for an account, logging in, reading an item, and submitting an item. They tested keyboard only access, increased text size, using a screen reader, whether videos auto-played and had controls, and many more things. And they tested on Mac and Windows desktop operating systems and in iOS and Android. As you can see in the table, none of the social media platforms was fully accessible. For instance, of the 6 media platforms they tested, only 3 offered settings to control autoplay, only 3 allowed video to be paused, and only 3 provided page titles. Every one of the platforms had videos that autoplayed and other barriers, such as no headings, inaccessible forms, and incorrect ARIA. Facebook was the only social media outlet that was keyboard only accessible. By the way, you'll hear keyboard only access a lot in accessibility. It means being able to use a web page with only a keyboard, no mouse. This is important because most assistive technology operates with keyboard-like functionality, so without a mouse. It's also helpful for touch typists and keyboard super users who prefer to use only the keyboard. So why isn't social media more accessible? There are many, many reasons why these big companies haven't put more money into making their platforms more accessible. But really, the main reason is that social media platforms, the technology changes all the time. For example, Facebook pushes out changes 5 times a day on average, and they don't give content creators warning about upcoming changes. This picture here of the Crikey news feed shows some crazy looking code in place of headings down here by the little pink arrow. Facebook made changes that resulted in code showing up in news headlines. And while many newspapers caught on quickly and made adjustments, not everybody did. Even if you make your social media completely accessible today, that doesn't mean it will be accessible tomorrow. Anybody have any questions about social media and how it being accessible before we move on? Any questions about what we just talked about? Okay, all right. If you do, just speak up. So with so many problems with social media, how can you make sure everyone in your audience is able to access your messages? I'll let you in on a secret. Chances are your content will never be 100% accessible. There are just too many variables. The best we can hope for is to be as accessible as possible. But it is possible to be more accessible to a lot more people than we have been. Here are some things you can do to make it easier for people to access your content. So first, you can make your social media account itself or your profile page, especially a lot more accessibility friendly. Provide your contact information on your profile page. Post to multiple social media outlets. Use multiple communication channels. Highlight alternative apps. Point out the platform's accessibility tips. Let's go through each of these tips in a little more detail. Different social media platforms allow you to display different information in different ways on your main landing or your profile page. But all of them allow some form of contact information, or I should say most of them, never all, but for users who are unable to access your content, adding an email address or a phone number provides them with a way to contact you for questions or follow-up questions. Here's an image of ASU's official Twitter page. Above the tweets near the top, it gives both a geographical location of ASU and a website URL where people can go for more information. In addition, there's an email address so that people can use this alternative form of communication. Not all social media networks are equally accessible to all people. Some groups will prefer one social media network over another, and some users won't be able to use social media network at all. For this reason, make sure you post the same content to multiple social media platforms to ensure that all users can access the content. Use multiple communication channels to get your message out. Allow people to subscribe to individual or daily or weekly email a digest of your posts, for example. In addition, HTML can be one of the most accessible forms and the most accessible to make, or the easiest to make accessible. So provide a feed of your posts on a web page. For instance, this feed from Barrett Honors College is another way for people to access their Twitter content. It's an alternative way to consume the information for anyone who might find accessing web pages easier than figuring out the nuances of a social media app. For instance, many people without vision customize their screen reader, their browser or braille reader settings to meet their individual needs. So it's much easier for them to use their own familiar setup rather than a strange app that might employ unfamiliar controls, keystrokes, or gestures. Let users know about alternative apps that might provide more accessible ways to display social media. This is a recent list put together by Accessibility Oz, who obviously I really like this, this group of people and down under. So this list is of popular social media outlets, some alternatives. It's by no means exhaustive. Let your audience know about these alternative apps because some of them may not know that these apps exist or that there's another way they can get to your content. If you want this list, you can download the slides from the link I mentioned earlier, links.asu.edu/SOC-MED. Most of the popular platforms have accessibility help pages with information and tips for making their sites or apps easier to use. Often users don't know that these pages exist or where to find them. Some may decide that barriers preventing them from getting to your content are just insurmountable, and they might just give up trying. Posting links to help pages directs users to information on how to access your content and allows them to participate in the social media network. Again, you can copy these links from the slides later, so you don't have to worry about writing them all down. In review, you'll notice that many of the tips we mentioned are concerned with offering multiple platforms and communication channels and alternative apps and ways to consume your content. These words, multiple and alternative, are key. Being accessible is all about giving your users options for consuming your content in the way that works best for them. It stands to reason then that the more options you offer, the bigger your audience will be. Do we have any questions before we move on to creating accessible posts? Anybody want to ask a question about how to make your profile more accessible? We're good for now? Okay, good. I must be doing a good job covering everything. So another and perhaps even more important way to make your social media more accessible is to create accessible posts. Here are 4 major ways you can improve the accessibility of your content. So write accessible content. Use camel case hashtags. Limit hashtags and add them only to the end. Avoid misspellings. Avoid abbreviations. Use a URL shortener. Use good color contrast in images. Caption your videos. Add or edit image alternative text. Let's go over these one by one in a little more detail. So writing accessible content is really, it's not very difficult. It's just something that you need to remind yourself to do for a few weeks until it starts to become a habit. So let's look at the 5 ways you can write more accessibly. First, use camel case hashtags. Hashtags are strings of words smooshed together. Camel case is a programming term, but it's a vivid one and accurate. Capitalize the first letter of every word in your hashtags. It does sort of resemble a camel's hump a little. For instance, in these cases, you would write in all caps, FIFI, and then capital world, capital initial capital CUP 2022 for FIFA World Cup 2022. Or you would do hashtag initial capital Arizona, initial capital state, and initial capital university. That way screen readers will more accurately read hashtags as individual words rather than one long word mushed together. Limit hashtags and add them only to the end of your post. So screen reader users, then they'll hear the most interesting part of your message first, then skip the sometimes long list of hashtags that screen readers often mangle. I just put this in here for an example. This is what a lot of what screen readers have to listen to if they see a long URL like this, rather than a shortened URL or a link.
Link https://video.imp.com/recorded/128,470,152. You left parent link is external right parent.
I think we can all agree that that's a little much to have to listen to. Avoid misspellings, avoid abbreviations. I don't think we need to discuss those, but if you can tell what the screen reader sounded like on the URL, can imagine how it makes abbreviations or shorteners or misspelling sound. To make this a URL shortener, you can use one like the ASU Google shortener at links.asu.edu, or any third-party shortener. For instance, bitly.com has a good one.
Link https://video.imp.com/
Let me try that. All right. So color contrast is a fairly easy to fix, fairly easy thing to fix also. High contrast text is easier to see. Black text on a white background or white text on a black background is much easier to see than something more medium like light gray text on an off-white background. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, are the accessibility standards we must comply with for digital content in the United States. WCAG says that for normal text, the contrast between the text and the background must be 4.5 to 1. For headlines or larger text, it must be 3 to 1. You can test the colors you use in an online color contrast checker. One of the best is from WebAIM, and I've added the URL here. It's webaim.org/resources/contrast checker. And that is also in text on the slides, so you should be able to get to that from the slides. So you put the hex color code of your text in the first field, and then the color of the background in the second field. And the checker lets you know that what the contrast ratio between those two colors is. In this case, the contrast ratio of the dark blue on a white background is 8.5 to 1, which vastly exceeds the required 4.5 to 1 ratio. WebAIM also tells you a little further down whether the resulting ratio passes or fails for both regular and large text. Notice that we've outlined the WCAG AA results. WCAG has 3 levels of compliance: A, AA, and AAA. The legal requirement in the United States is to meet levels A and AA compliance. AAA is not required. At ASU, all videos posted online must be captioned. Captions are a text translation of the video sound, and they include the dialogue, speaker and identification if there's more than one speaker, relevant background noises, and other important audio. This is in contrast to subtitles, which you might see on a foreign film, and all they do is translate the actual spoken word. So captions add a little bit more usually, if there is more to add. Captions are critical for many people. They benefit users who are blind or hard of hearing, individuals with cognitive impairments that make processing auditory information difficult, people in noisy or very quiet environments like a cafe or a library, non-native speakers, and many others. If the social media platform provides auto captioning, enable it. Then make sure you edit the captions. The image of these two men singing a Christmas song captioned, "Read off the rent those reindeer," illustrates how terrifically inaccurate some auto captioning can be. If the platform doesn't provide auto captioning, check if you can upload a caption file, such as an SRT file. You can create this caption file on another platform like YouTube, then upload the caption file to the social media site. Some social media platforms don't provide captions and don't allow you to upload caption files. In this case, you should use software like Adobe Captivate or the free software Handbrake to burn or embed captions into your videos. And that link to there's a link to Handbrake on the transcripts. You can email me later if you want that. But I think it comes up on a search too. It's actually pretty good free software. Most social media platforms allow you to add alternative text to images, and it's very important that you do so. People with low or no vision can't see images, and neither can their screen readers. Assistive technologies of all types can only consume text. Image text alternatives are text descriptions of what an image is trying to convey. As shown in these images, when you upload a photo in Facebook, before you save it, select the image and you'll see a little edit button appears. This will give you the option to add text alternatives. Just select alternative text and type in a description of the image. If the image is decorative, that is, if it conveys no real meaning and is basically just what I call eye candy, type an empty space or two into the description field to tell screen readers they can ignore the image. Almost all other social media apps have a similar way to add alternative text. As shown in the Twitter mobile screenshot, you can select or tap the image you're uploading to get to the image options. Describe the meaning being conveyed by the image. Again, if the image has no real function and it's just a nice embellishment, type an empty space or two to indicate to assistive technologies that they can go ahead and skip that image. You may be wondering how you know when an image needs a description and what makes good alternative text. You aren't alone. Writing good alt text takes a little skill, but a couple of rules can help. First, ask yourself, what would be lost if the image wasn't there? If nothing, then you know it's decorative. Second, if the image does add meaning to the post or the page, here's a trick for deciding how you're going to describe it. Pretend you're on the phone and have to describe the image to a friend. Your friend isn't very patient, so you'll need to describe only the main relevance or function of the image, not every detail. Some people say this method helps them create effective alternative text. When determining the main relevance or function of an image, remember also that context is vital. For example, there are many ways to describe this photo of a house. If the image was in an architecture newsletter, our alt text might be the Georgian-style Daniel Boone house in Missouri was built in 1800 from hand-hewn limestone blocks. However, if it's a post about a club's recent trip, we would probably emphasize the people, the club members. For instance, we might say history club members visiting Daniel Boone's house. Context can help you decide what's most important to convey. By the way, a little tip, there's no need to add photo of or image of to alt text. Screen readers automatically announce an image as an image. So the alternative text image of Daniel Boone's home would be read aloud by a screen reader as image of Daniel Boone's home. Some images have text embedded in them. Images with graphic text are some of the easiest to write alt text for. Why? Because all you'll do is duplicate the text in the image word for word in the alt text. That way, people without vision get the same information afforded people with vision. For this image, our alt text would read, Hayden 50, celebrating our past, building our future. Finally, for reference, here are a few examples of what decorative images are. So in this one, we have a rule. Rules and similar typographic embellishments are almost always decorative. This photo of generic blank book covers shown under the title 6 Books for Your Alaska Reading List is nice, but it really doesn't impart any extra information. It's there to lend ambiance or visual interest, and the article loses nothing by removing it, so it's decorative. Finally, in a list of degrees, the image paired with anthropology is abstract and doesn't lend or provide any new information. However, if it was a link, we would want to add alt text because all links must have text. But our alt text won't refer to the visual look of the image. Instead, we'll emphasize its function as a link and describe the destination. So if it was a link, we would probably use the alt text, something like read more about the anthropology BA degree. So I've given you a lot of information all at once. I hope I haven't overwhelmed you. If something occurs to you tomorrow or even next month, please feel free to email me or Slack me on ASU's accessibility channel. But for now, I'm open and ready for any of your questions, anything you come up against. Does anybody have any questions?
Hi, Kathy. My name is Maureen, and I Koborowski. I'm with the Humanities Lab, and I have a question that didn't come up specifically in the presentation, but it is something that has come up recently regarding accessibility.
Oh, sure.
So we are in the process of updating our hero image, which actually we want to be a hero video for our homepage on our website. And the question is, do you have any information in regards to whether or not these are able to loop, or what kind of standards are in place for videos? We heard that there might be some specifications on as to whether they loop or how many images can be displayed in the hero, but I wondered if you might have more information that I could get now or later if this doesn't seem.
So this is a video? Sound?
Yeah, it's a video. It's not exactly a video. There's not sound to it. So it's just like a silent video, I suppose, if you will. And it's like a series of short clips, video clips, all kind of mashed together.
Yeah, okay, so yes, for videos that don't have sound, the problem is there are people that have vestibular disorders, for instance, that they get motion sickness, or they can become actually violently ill, or they can interpret movement like flashes, and you can trigger a seizure. So we really, we like to suggest that you stay away from those. But the law says right now, the WCAG says that if it plays for more than 3 seconds, I think it's 3, it might be 5 seconds, you have to have a pause button. So you can go ahead and do that, but you have to provide a pause button so that if someone feels, if they're feeling ill from that, they can pause it. Now, if the video, I know yours doesn't, but if the video had sound, that is basically a no-no. And you'll notice even on YouTube now, if you go to a YouTube video, even if a video starts playing, it doesn't play with sound. And that's because people with screen readers, if I go to a page and the video starts playing and there's a lot of sound, I won't be able to hear my screen reader. And so that page then is inaccessible, or there's a barrier there for me. So you always, if there's sound, you want to provide controls so that the user can select play themselves. Again, it's like we mentioned with the profile, it's giving people more options. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions? Social media has become so popular, and lots of people with disabilities, you'd be surprised, a lot of them use mobile phones, especially iPhones really have been in the vanguard of accessibility. And so they do use their mobile phones, and they do want to participate on social media platforms. So I think it's wonderful that you guys want to make your posts and your social media accounts more accessible. More power to you. It's excellent. Anybody have any other questions? Okay, you can ask me questions about other things. It doesn't have to be social media. So my team, my team, I'm basically the team right now. We offer office hours every Wednesday from 1 to 5. If you go to our website, webaccessibility.asu.edu, you can sign up. You can book an hour, even if you don't need an hour. Just let me know what you want to talk about, and we can discuss it. Now, if you're you're really in a hurry, it's like, I got to figure out, I got to have this done by 5. Slack me on the accessibility channel, or email us. Well, Kelsey?
Yep, I think that's everything. No questions in the chat.
I cannot see the time. What time is it?
It is 11:35.
Oh, wow, you guys got back 25 minutes. Okay. Well, please contact me. That's what I'm here for. I am here to answer your accessibility questions about anything, anything digital. So I look forward, hopefully, to hearing from some of you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathy.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to hang